Abercrombie denim is everything right now. Denim should feel like this. Confident, easy, like your butt has never looked better. If you didn't know, Abercrombie's Curve Love denim went viral in 2019 for eliminating waist gap, and it's still a game changer. Between that and their classic fits with a straighter line from waist to hip, the perfect denim does exist. Shop Abercrombie denim in the app, online, and in store.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. When your computer breaks, you don't wait for it to magically start working again. You fix the problem. So why wait to hire the people your company desperately needs? Use Indeed's sponsored jobs to hire top talent fast. And even better, you only pay for results. There's no need to wait. Speed up your hiring with a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
Hello, and thank you for listening to The History of World War II podcast, episode 562, The Race for Tunis. Last time, though messy, the French forces throughout North Africa stopped resisting the Western Allies. In response, Hitler activated Case Anton, the German and Italian occupation of metropolitan France and Corsica. Though Berlin did not get all it wanted, as the French troops at the naval base of Toulon defied the Axis troops and destroyed the vast majority of the French fleet, lest it should fall into German hands. Meanwhile, German infantry, fighters, bombers, and heavy guns were quickly being shipped to Tunisia, as it would serve as the last Axis holdout in North Africa. Thus, the stage was set, with the Americans and British driving from the west, while Monty's Eighth Army moved closer from the southeast. The farmers of Tunisia had been plying their trade since 4000 BCE and were the ancestors of today's Berber tribes. The Phoenicians controlled the coast even before the farmers were there, and of course there had been the great city of Carthage in the 9th century BCE. The ever-expanding Roman Empire would greatly affect the area that would become known as Tunisia, but in time, this all fell to the great Arab Muslim conquests of the 7th century AD. Next to control the future Tunisia was the Ottoman Empire in 1534, but its hold would be shaky. The local bey or ruler would have more autonomy over time, and in the late 1800s, local attempts to modernize their way of life and economy, handled badly, brought on debt all out of proportion, which the French used as an excuse to invade in 1881. But after 1940, the French that controlled Tunisia were Vichy, and simply unable to stop Hitler when he decided to send reinforcements to this last holdout in November of 42. But what the Americans were about to find out, that the Axis already knew, was that Tunisia's geography could be an ally to those in the know. The dorsal mountains, aka High Tell, of Tunisia runs from the southwest to the northeast in the northern part of the country. Between that and the impermanent lakes, the major one being Shatt al-Qasar, just south of the mountain range, along with the deserts around the same area, Tunisia is pretty much divided in half, north to south. As the coast was to the right or east of the mountains, that's where the Axis airfields were, with the benefit of being in the dorsal mountains' rain shadow. Thus, there could be rain to the west of the mountains, the way the Allied troops of Torch were approaching from, while the Axis, on the other side, enjoyed drier conditions. And most of Tunisia's 25 inches of annual rain comes between November and February. Further, the rivers that flowed to the Gulf of Tunis on the northern coast went through the mountain divides, and the roads and rail lines naturally followed these. Thus, the Axis knew how and where the Allies from the west were going to approach. Trying to end Axis resistance in North Africa as fast as possible, the Allies' objective was Tunisia's two major ports, Bizerte and Tunis, again along the north coast. Without those, Rommel's forces further south would simply wither on the vine. The other reason the Allies needed the ports was to supply their own men. There was a slapdash rail line from Casablanca to northern Tunisia, quite inadequate to Allied needs, and 2 roads, one along the coast and the other close to the rail lines further inland, but they weren't much better. No, being able to bring supplies right to northern Tunisian shores was deemed best, so they had to be taken. And right in between the growing German forces and the approaching Allied forces from the west and the south were the French forces of 15,000 troops, 20 armored cars, and a few AA guns, quite inadequate for anything. Meanwhile, the Axis command in Tunisia took shape. Colonel Hans Leder took command of the German ground forces, of which 3 companies of paratroopers and panzer grenadiers were added. The French reacted to this growing threat as best they could. They blocked off the Tunisian ports. But that didn't matter as Italian engineers cleared up the harbors, and the first of many Italian transports landed at Bizerte, bringing in 340 men, 17 tanks, 4 guns, 55 trucks, 40 tons of ammunition, and 101 tons of fuel. With this shipment alone, the Axis already outgunned the French. With the harbors now under Axis control, the reinforcements started flowing in. Starting on November 12th, the following landed at Tunisia: the Italian Superga Division, the German 11th Paratroop Pioneer Battalion, a reconnaissance company, motorcycles, and a panzer company. Then came their aircraft. Soon there were 67 Bf-109s, 14 Focke-Wulf 190s, and 28 Ju-87 Stukas. But at Bizerte, there were at least 50 Ju-52 medium bombers landing each day. But even before the Allies on either front could contest the land of Tunisia, German air power and naval might were looking to make up for, let's be honest, being caught unawares on D-Day. Back on November 9th, though the USS Leedstown, a converted commercial passenger liner, had helped with the landings off Algiers on the 8th, she was now under repairs after being torpedoed in her stern. During the morning of the 9th, 3 German air attacks saw bombs just miss the wounded girl. Then 2 torpedoes also were just shy of the mark. But that afternoon, the German bombs were aimed true. The Leedstown went under with 8 of her crew. The rest were able to abandon ship. The Leedstown was just the first of many Allied ships, either to be lost or suddenly in need of repairs. On November 10th, U-431 sank the destroyer HMS Martin, taking 127 of her crew with her, while also off the coast of Algiers. It was the Italian submarine that sank the sloop HMS Ibis, further out from Algiers. Down with her went 117 of her crew. On November 11th, though it took them using over 50 bombers, the Axis finally scored a single hit on the carrier HMS Argus. 4 of her crew died from that. Clearly, she had to head home for repairs, so was en route, with the escort carrier Avenger providing protection, sailing just behind her. Heading out, the 2 carriers with escorts were of course spotted by the Germans, and U-155 caught up to this wounded convoy. Probably firing at the larger carrier in front, Argus, U-155's torpedoes instead hit the Avenger, sinking her. The Argus made it home. Repairs got underway. But needing more help than first assessed, Argus was in dry dock until May of 43, and even then she was reclassified as an escort carrier. She would spend the rest of the war, despite several plans, as a deck landing training carrier. Still, she and her crew did their duty. She would be scrapped in December of 1946. Yet in the Mediterranean, the deadly U-boats kept up their attacks.
This Labor Day at Lowe's, shop member-only doorbuster deals for a limited time. Save $50 on an Ego string trimmer, now $169. Plus, get 50% off select Holland pavers. Not a rewards member? Sign up for free today. But hurry, Labor Day doorbuster deals won't last long. Lowe's, we help, you save. Valid through 9/1 while supplies last. Program subject to terms and conditions. Details at Lowe's.com/terms. Subject to change.
The same day that Argus was hit with a bomb, just off Casablanca, a transport, a tanker, and a destroyer each received a torpedo within 8 minutes. The transport sank. U-173 had the honor of this achievement. Not that the captain of the transport, Captain Smith, did not try to save her. His idea had been to beach her, but as the number 2 hold was flooded, the ship's propellers were out of the water. Captain Smith, after trying a few more things, ordered abandon ship. Despite this, the captain and 100 of his seamen lost their lives. As all's fair in love and war, U-173 herself would be sunk 5 days later by American destroyers with depth charges. All 57 of her crew were also lost. As covered, the escort carrier HMS Avenger would be lost, sinking in minutes and taking 516 of her 528 men on board. The culprit, again U-173, would go on to hit 2 more transports and a cargo vessel before she herself was sunk. 2 of the ships survived, but as we've seen, the USS Swanson and USS Quick cornered U-173 off Casablanca and ushered her to a watery grave with their depth charges. As war waits for no man, neither does the politics around that war. As ships and U-boats were being lost at an increased rate, General Mark Clark and diplomat Robert Murphy were working overtime to bring Vichy forces over to their side. Even if they took Tunisia from the Axis forces militarily to truly control it in a helpful way, that required the active assistance of Vichy. But try as they might, General Clark and Murphy could not get the leading officers of Vichy or Tunisia to come on board. Probably no one wanted to be the first to break their oath and jump ship. But Marshal Pétain, Vichy's leader, whether from not being worried about his future or angry at the Germans or seeing the writing on the wall, secretly gave his permission. Thus, Admiral Darlan, C&C of all French forces, never known for letting grass grow under his feet, declared himself French North Africa's High Commissioner, with General Giraud acting as his C&C of French land and air forces. Of course, General de Gaulle's camp was beyond incensed, being kept in the dark all this time, while seemingly Washington and London, but mostly Washington, agreed to work with these former Nazi collaborators. The agreement was made official on November 22nd and worked out the military and political matters. The Americans got what they wanted, Vichy help and a new partner. Vichy formally turned away from the Axis and joined the Allies. But many in the press in the United States and the UK were outraged, almost as much as de Gaulle. From the respected columnist Walter Lippmann calling the Vichy a quisling government to CBS newsman Edward R. Murrow asking, "Are we fighting Nazis or sleeping with them?" There were those who, it has to be said, far away from the front, standing on principle over the lives of GIs, could not see what Eisenhower was trying to avoid. Point is, this had not been FDR's idea, though he did give it the green light, knowing that Clark and Murphy were trying to make the best of a messy situation. As was his wont, though, FDR quipped to the reporters, "My friends, I am told that in times of grave danger, it is permissible to hold the hand of the devil until you crossed the bridge." Besides, the Allied limelight the Vichy were currently in would not last. Both sides knew this. Darlan, certainly knowing this, was much more phlegmatic. His high point came when he was able to message Churchill after the French scuttled their own fleet at Toulon, "I told you we would never surrender the fleet. It seems you didn't believe me." Now he told General Clark, "I am to be used and thrown away," which was true, but the Americans in power, military and civilian, would have done anything at this stage to save American lives and time. But leave it to Eisenhower, equal parts politician and military leader, which is a major reason he got the top job, knew that without Vichy help, running North Africa would have taken too many men who would be needed elsewhere. So his statement was blunt, yet smooth. It is impossible to exaggerate the degree to which, in carrying on the fight in Tunisia, we are dependent upon the goodwill and cooperation of the French. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is how you put lipstick on a pig.
First Merchants Bank has your best interest at heart. And by best interest, we mean more than just our competitive rates.
We mean flexible account options for your every need.
And mortgage experts like me to help you buy your dream home.
Don't forget our attentive commercial bankers, here to help your business thrive.
At First Merchants,
we know.
Your best interest is a bank that's interested in your success. Learn more at firstmerchants.com/switch. First Merchants Bank, helping you prosper. Member FDIC, Equal Housing Lender.
The Clark-Dolan Agreement of November 22nd also contained the arrangement of the U.S. to supply and rearm the French army in Africa. General Henri Giraud made General Juin Algerian field commander, leaving General Louis-Marie Coutts and his 19th Region Militaire to be the main French unit to fight in the front, on the right side or further south of the Americans. Of course, as the Americans would find out, though Admiral Darlan, in General Clark's presence, had sent the message for his forces to resist the Germans, he would counter that order just as soon as Clark left. But the French would still get arms from the Americans. For what it's worth, and it turned out to be not much, General Henri Girard continued to suggest that he should be the Allied CNC. You can't blame a guy for trying. As the Allies approached Tunisia from the west, the French and German forces in the country were in the middle of their own tense standoff. The Germans were still bringing in more men and material, while at the same time trying to do nothing to start a fight with the still more numerous French, while the French, in the form of General Georges Barre, was playing his own stalling game, but simultaneously moving his men back away from the Germans and closer to where the Allies would be coming in to safeguard his men for the coming fight. While dealing with Axis air and submarine attacks on their shipping, having locked down mostly a French agreement, it was time to move east for Tunisia proper. The race for Tunis was on, but the Allies of November 1942 were not the Allies of late 1944. Not yet. Yes, the Western partners would have more men and more supplies, but not enough. Enough for what they really wanted to do and how quickly they wanted to do it. In the end, it would come down to the Allies, still weak in terms of shipping and air power, needing to cover the distance of North Africa, against the region's geography, weather, good old logistics, and in the end of this painful path, the building German forces, and of course, Rommel's Afrika Korps. And the icing on the cake was that in about 3 weeks' time, Tunisia's weather would turn all that sand into a quagmire as the rainy season came. Before the Eastern Command Task Force had landed, it was under the command of U.S. Major General Charles Doc Ryder, as Torch was to be an American undertaking on paper. But now that Algiers was secured, British Lieutenant General Kenneth Anderson would take over, and he had come ashore on November 9th. Moving out, the Eastern Task Force would travel by land, air, and sea, anything to leapfrog sections of the poorly maintained coastal road. The first port to be reached and taken by amphibious landing was Bougie, modern-day Bahia, about 100 miles east of Algiers, but still in Algeria. Men from the British 36th Brigade of the 78th Infantry Division landed there on November 11th, covered by the Royal Navy. The French did little to resist, but Luftwaffe air attacks later that day did cause casualties. As for Philippeville, or modern-day Skikda, and Bone, or Annaba, port cities further east, but still in Algeria, They had British commandos and U.S. paratroopers come ashore on D-Day, November 8th. As they were weakly guarded by the French, the city's administration gave up without a fight. But again, German air power would be a nuisance. As for the majority of the Eastern Task Force, they were traveling by land. As Lieutenant General Anderson put it, by every kind of scrawny vehicle that can run. For reference, Bonn, or modern-day Annaba, is about 35 miles from the Tunisian border. But coming ever closer to enemy-held territory, the German air raids picked up. The day after Bougie was occupied, 3 of the landing craft that had brought the men ashore were sunk by Axis airplanes. Now that Allied troops were in North Africa and controlling more of it every day, the mask of the Eastern Task Force was removed. Allied Forces HQ redesignated the task force British First Army. But the word army was more of a goal. The First Army only had Major General Vivian Ely's 78th Infantry Division of 2 brigade groups. Lieutenant General Anderson's Blade Force of 2,500 British and American troops, 36 Valentine tanks, 24 Cruiser 3 tanks, and 54 U.S. M3 Stuart tanks with 25-pounders and 6-pound anti-tank guns was also to be eventually brought into the field. But as for the British First Army, as U.S. troops from Iran and Morocco became free, they would move east and join it. Overall, Ike wanted, eventually, 2 separate British and American corps. The Allied forces kept moving east. On November 15th, the advance units of the British 36th Brigade Group occupied Tabarka, 5 miles inside the Tunisian border. That same day, 33 C-47s dropped 350 paratroopers of Lieutenant Colonel Raff's PIR on Aix-les-Bains, modern-day Mohammed, near Tunisia's western border. Itself is just west of a place called Kasserine. The next day, November 16th, American and British paratroopers dropped men at Souk El Arba and Jebel Aboid, just south of Tabarka, itself again in northwestern Tunisia. These various landings made contact with the French forces, again who had been backing up away from the Germans, but these drops also prepared the Allies to enter Tunisia proper, along the coast, and again at Kasserine. Greetings, everyone, from Central Virginia. So sorry I missed a show last week, but hey, things get away from you sometime. Anyway, so we're back on schedule. Let's see here. In no particular order, because I love you all equally, I would like to say hi and thanks to Nick Nairhood, who I think has returned as a member, and also Martin. He knows who he is. He advises me where and where not to move to. Sent in his annual check. Thank you, gentlemen. Let's see here. As far as new members go, I have a Kathy Argo from Maryland, a Scott Lemons from Belgium, Jeffrey Gleason from Massachusetts, Carson Harris from Alabama, and they donated, so thank you very much for that. And finally, John Bartlett and Alberto Dasum. So thank you all very much. It is greatly appreciated. Oh, and I think a Damon Roussos also donated. So sorry about that, Damon. I apologize. So I think that's everybody. I'm caught up. So now that we've got the American troops and the British to the west, close or inside the Tunisian border, and of course, we left off with Monty's forces coming up from the southeast. I'm going to switch gears and go into it because now we're going into battle mode, and I'm going to bring in a lot more detail. I've been just kind of doing a lot higher level. But anyway, so the battles are back, so the details will be back, and I will see you as soon as I can with the next episode. So, I'm looking forward to it because now we're stuck in, right? It's going to be a lot of fun. Take care, everyone.
Say what you want about AI, but it's here, and it's helping businesses get more done in a day. Wix's website builder is infused with AI so you can stay ahead. Create a beautiful, functional website just by describing your idea. Track how your site appears in AI search results. create custom images on demand, or launch an entire campaign in a matter of minutes. Wix gives you AI wherever you need it. Try it out for yourself at Wix.com.
Welcome to True Spies, the podcast that takes you deep inside the greatest secret missions of all time.
Suddenly, out of the darkness appeared Bin Laden.
You'll meet the people who live life undercover. What do they know? What are their skills? And what would you do in their position?
Vengeance felt good. Seeing these people pay for what they'd done felt righteous.
True Spies from Spyscape Studios, wherever you get your podcasts.